Good afternoon, everyone. We'll just wait for a couple more minutes for others to join, and then we'll start the session. Right, let's get started. Uh, I am Sedu Vinayagam, a PhD scholar from the Civil Engineering Department at IIT Madras, and I welcome you to the second week of our live interactive sessions conducted for the Sustainable Transportation Systems course conducted by NPTEL. Let's start with an overview of what was covered in the lectures of week 2. Okay, so this week was mainly about the transportation system and its impacts on the environment. Right, so it was that was the broad theme of week 2, and in again we had 5 lectures. So the in each of these lectures we were looking at one particular aspect of the the impacts, like impacts on human health, air quality, soil, and etc. in each lecture. So the first lecture we were looking at, what are the general environmental impacts of the transportation system. So we were looking at what is the linkage between the transport and the environment, how transportation affects environment, also how some of the environmental aspects affect the planning of the transportation systems. And then we were looking at the consumption of energy, right? So in particular from the transport sector, right? So we know that one transport sector is one of the largest consumers of energy, right? And so we looked at that. So within the transportation sector, which mode of transport consumes most energy, and so on. And then in lecture 2 we are looking at the impacts on human health, right? So we have transportation externalities, and one effect of it is on the human health. So because we create a lot of emissions from the transportation sector, not only during its operation, right from its construction stage onwards, right? So there is a lot of emissions, and in particular we were looking at the air pollution and its impacts, right? So what is the role of the traffic induced accidents and the air pollution, and what are the how can we prevent it, how can we mitigate this impact that is caused by the air pollution from the transportation sector. So what are the policies and strategies that can be adopted. So that was covered in week 2, lecture 2. In lecture 3 we were looking at the flora and fauna, so how transportation sector affects us both directly as well as indirectly. Okay, directly is just by the activities of the transportation sector. If there is an impact on these, it is called the direct impact. And indirect impact is we are not directly affecting the flora, the activities do not directly affect them, but in some other form. So you do an activity A leads to some other activity B, and that affects the flora and fauna. So that's called the indirect impact. So we looked at these two, and also we were looking at one particular like an example, to the life cycle of a road and railway. So how at different stages of this life cycle we have different impacts on the flora and fauna that are surrounding this railway or a road or the roads. And also we looked at mitigation measures for particularly with respect to these impacts. And then in the fourth lecture, we were looking at the impact on the soil and water, right? So there is a effect on the soil and also on the water, specifically the groundwater as well as the surface water. So what are the impacts? Then we know that or we have learned that the road transportation is one of the largest contributors to the environmental impact, but that doesn't mean the other modes of transport are not contributing this impact. There are also contributions from them. So in particular, we were looking at the water transport and air transport and their impacts. So also we looked at the acid rain, right? So because of the air pollutions, right? So these NOx and sulfuric acid and the sulfur oxides that we are releasing, so they contribute to these acid rains, and also the mitigation measures related to that. And finally, in lecture number 5, we were focused on noise pollution, right? So noise pollution, different transportation activities create noise, right? So from construction, operation to even the removal part. So we have noise generated in all these different processes. And this is one form of the pollution that we cannot ignore, right? So this has impacts on the health as well. So we looked at different standards, US standards, Indian standards, and what are the factors that contribute to these noise pollutions, what are the different sources, how do we measure them, and also how can we reduce or even and reduce the effects of these noise pollution on the environment as well as the human health. Right? So that's the broad overview of what was covered in week 2. Now we'll get into the questions related to these concepts. Okay, so we'll start with the first question. So which is which of the following standards in India is more efficient in terms of minimizing the vehicular emissions? So the options are option A, Bharat Stage 3, Bharat Stage 4, option C is Bharat Stage 5, and option D is Bharat Stage 6. Okay, so as usual, we will create a poll, and then you can, once you can go through the question, think about it, and when you're ready, you can answer the poll. Okay, the poll is launched. Okay, any answers? Okay, we have one vote for option D. Okay, any other answers? Okay, I just request everyone to participate in the polls, right? Like even if you're not sure of the answer, like whatever you think is correct, you can pick that option, and then we'll see the answer and then explain it. Okay, so you don't have to, it's not like only when you know the answer correctly, you can pick. Like even if you don't know, it's fine. Whatever is the closest that you think is correct, you choose that, and then we'll see what is the right one. Okay, so we have two votes for both option D. Right, so let's look at the answer now. So the right answer is option D. It's Bharat stage 6. Right, so here, so we are looking at emission standards, right? So particularly in India, so in India we have these Bharat stage emission standards. Okay, that's applicable for the emissions from compression engines and also spark ignition engines. So because the vehicles that we use, the motor vehicles that we use, are generally using one of these, right, depending on the fuel type, right? So these standards are also applicable to the motor vehicles. So here we are talking about these standards, and we are asking the question which is more efficient. So what is efficient here is, more efficient means which is more or which helps reduce the emissions more, right? So efficient in terms of reducing the pollutants that is emitted from these vehicles, right? So in that case, we are defining more efficient. So if you look at the different standards, so these standards are in place since 2000. So 2000 is when these Bharat stage emission standards were introduced, and we have many revisions, right? So different norms. So stage 6 is the latest norm that is currently in place, right? So since 2020, right? So with each higher stage, so we have this more stringent criteria on what is the maximum acceptable level of emissions for different pollutants allowed from these vehicles, right? So in that sense, so Bharat stage 6 is the most stringent norms, and therefore that is the most efficient in reducing the vehicular emissions, right? So therefore option D is the right answer. Okay, so question number 2 is, a population of wolves was divided due to the construction of a road through the forest area. Over time, the separated populations decreased and became vulnerable due to shortage of food and shelter. So this is an example of dash. So the options are habitat fragmentation, adaptive traits, natural selection, and biodiversity. Okay, we have one vote for A and one vote for D. Right, let's look at the answer. So the right option is option A. It is habitat fragmentation. Right. So we were so in lecture 3 of this week. So we were looking at the direct and indirect impacts of the transportation system on the flora and fauna. Right. So what's given here is one of the direct impacts. Right. So we have some forest area. Right. So through this we are building some new roadway, right? So we have built a new roadway through this existing land of forest. So what is this? So before this, the animals living in this, so in this case it's the population of wolves, so they would be all over this area, moving freely through it, right? So once we have constructed this road through this forest area, it's naturally divided now into two separate areas of land, right? So the animals now cannot freely move from one part to the other, right? So because there is some disturbance created by this construction of road, so there they create some repelling effect. So because of this vehicular movements that go through this, so the animals do not cross from one side of this to the other as easily as they were doing it before, right? So this creates a separated population, right? So and over time, the area over which they were searching for food and they were taking shelter reduces, and this is contributing to the decreased population with time, right? So this particular thing is called habitat fragmentation. So habitat is their the land that they are living in, right? So this is now fragmented, that is separated into two parts now, right? So that is the habitat fragmentation, one of the direct impacts of the transportation system on the fauna, right? So adaptive trait is basically how the genes or the traits is basically a characteristic, right? So like gene traits, how they are changing according to the conditions of the environment to allow a particular organism to survive, right? So that's not what this is described in the question. Natural selection is again one of the mechanisms of evolution, right? So the survival of the fittest, so one that is more suitable for a particular environment will be able to survive, and they will pass on the genes, and then they will evolve and survive. So that's also not what's given here. Biodiversity refers to is a term that refers to the variety that we see in the variety of animals and plants that we see in the ecosystem, right? So we have a very diverse or a very wide range of plants and animals, so that's what we refer to as the biodiversity. Again, that's not the right option. So the right answer is habitat fragmentation. Okay, question number 3 is international transportation of people is regarded as one of the main reason for quick spreading of the COVID-19 disease. So we have to say whether this a given statement is correct or incorrect. Okay, sorry for the interruption. I just lost my internet connection. Okay. So I don't know where the connection got cut off. So I'll just quickly summarize what I was talking about. So the right answer for question 2 is option A, habitat fragmentation. So this is because we have constructed a road through the forest area. So that has now divided this land into two fragments, right? So two parts, separating the population of wolves on either side, so they are not able to freely cross this roadway because of the disturbances caused by the traffic movement, right? So that is now reducing the area over which they are living. So the food availability and shelter is now reduced. So that's leading to the decreased population. So this is a direct effect of the transportation system on the fauna, and this is called the habitat fragmentation. So other three are not really applicable because they describe different things than what is given here. So adaptive trait is about surviving due adapting to the conditions that an organism lives in, right? So for survival, natural selection and evolution mechanism, for so the ones that are more suitable to live in a particular condition, so they will evolve and then they will survive in that particular condition. Biodiversity related to the variety of flora and fauna that we see in the ecosystem, right? So the right option is option A, habitat fragmentation. So moving on to question 3 is, international transportation of people is regarded as one of the main reason for quick spreading of COVID-19 disease. We have to say whether the given statement is correct or incorrect. Okay, I have created the poll. So we have two votes for option A, that it is true. Okay, so the right option is option A, it is true. Okay, so I think this is an easy one because we know, so we have experienced this COVID-19 disease, right? So it is a communicable disease, right? So it spreads from one person to the other. So that's the reason why we had lockdowns, right? So we wanted to contain it, right? So to prevent it spreading, so to do that, we had lockdowns. So, limiting the contact between people so that we can reduce the spread and treat it. By through international travel, so what has happened is, so it has spread through all parts of the world, right? So that's how it became a pandemic, right? So it originated in one location, but then because of the transportation system that we have today, every place on earth is now connected almost, right? So that has led to the spread of this disease from that originating point to everywhere, right? So if, for example, if we didn't have a good transportation system, it took a long time to travel from one place to other, maybe it may not have spread as quickly, right? So we have been able to limit its spread and not become a global pandemic, right? So that's a different scenario, but uh, because of the international transportation, it allowed this disease to spread quickly, right? And therefore this given statement is true. One of the the cons that we see of the transportation system that we have today is maybe in is this, right? So while it provides connectivity, while it improves the economy, right? So through trade and all that, so this is one downside that we have, is it helped spread these communicable diseases. Okay, so question number 4 is, we have a couple of statements. Statement 1 is, noise pollution can increase the heartbeat and dilation of pupil in humans. And statement 2 is the CPCB noise level standards in India have the potential for comparatively lesser noise emissions when compared to the FHWA standards in the United States. We have the third statement, the width of the road and the land use activities are factors that can influence the noise in an area. So we have to choose one of these four options, whether statements 1, 2, and 3 are true, only statements 1 and 3 are true, only statements 2 and 3 are true, or only statement 2 is false. Okay, we have one more for option B. Any other answer? Okay, we have one for B and one for D, almost complementing each other, right? Right. Let's take a look at the right option. So the right option is, in fact, so option A, all three given statements are correct. Okay, so let's look at each of them. So statement 1 says noise pollution can increase the heartbeat and dilation of pupil in humans. So this is correct, right? So you may have experienced this also, right? So when you are exposed to very loud noise, so you may have experienced this increase in the heartbeat, right? So when we generally talk of pollution, we do not think of noise as one of the types of pollution, right? So it's generally more in terms of air, soil pollution, water pollution. That's what immediately strikes our mind. But noise can also it's a pollution because it impacts our health, not just our health, also the other plants and animals around us. So we looked at the when we are looking at the impact of noise pollution, right? So we can divide into three major categories, right? So there is the subjective impact, right? So subjective because some people consider that to be harmful, while some others don't, right? So some people, like loud music, right? So for others, it may be more irritating or annoying. So that's the subjective impact, right? So because it differs from one person to the other. Then we have, behavioral impacts. So behavioral impacts is when you are exposed to this noise pollution, right? It impacts your, daily activities, right? So you are not able to perform tasks efficiently, right? So you are exposed to, loud noises, and that, reduces efficiency. You are not able to perform it as good as you would when you are not exposed to such high levels. So that's the behavioral part. And then there are also, physiological impacts that it can have, right? So it can, like as it is given here, it can increase the heartbeat, dilation of pupils, or it can also cause deafening of ears, right? So those aspects are also there. So these three broad categories can be, the noise pollution impacts can be put into these three broad categories, right? So also under the physiological impact, so this can come in, right? So this is possible. So statement one is true. Statement 2 talks about the noise level standards, right? So CPCB stands for the Central Pollution Control Board. So so we have a noise level standard in India. So that's given by the CPCB, and the statement says it has a potential for comparatively lesser noise emissions when compared to the FHWA standards in the US, right? So this is the Federal Highway Standards. So they also have a noise level standard. So what the noise level standard says is, for a given type of area, right? So what is the maximum permissible level of noise for that area, right? So again, we measure noise in terms of the decibels, right? So the noise is a form of sound energy, right? So we measure it in terms of decibels, and for each type of land use, so what is the permissible noise level? So that's what the standard tells us. So it should not exceed that standard. So here when we are talking, so we are comparing these two standards, the CPCB and the FHWA standards. So when we say it has the potential for a comparatively lesser noise emission, so what does that mean? So for lesser noise emission, the maximum permissible noise level should be lower, right? So when the standard says it should be X, then we cannot exceed that level X, right? So when it has the potential for comparatively lesser noise emissions, it means that the maximum permissible noise level given by the CPCB should be lower than the FHWA standard, right? So then only we can say that it leads to a lesser noise emission. So this is true because when you compare the noise level standards of CPCB and FHWA, for each type of land use, you will find that the CPCB standard is at least as much, is at most as much as the FHWA standard. So the CPCB noise level standard will be less than or equal to the FHWA standard for the different land use types. So that's why it has a potential for a lesser noise emission. So if we are properly enforcing the standards, then the noise emissions will be lower in according to the CPCB standards. So right, so that's why statement 2 is correct, because we have more stringent norms, but it has to be properly enforced. That's why here it is, the word potential is used. So if it is properly enforced, then we will have a comparatively lesser noise emission. So statement 3 is say the width of the road and the land use activities are the factors that can influence the noise in an area. So this is also true. So it may be more intuitive as well. So we have wider roads and also more activities going on around this road. So naturally the more activities will lead to more noise emissions, right? So width of the road, so there will be more traffic volume. So there is one particular cycle, the land use transport cycle. You may be or may not be familiar with it. So that tells us, that cycle is basically when you have a particular volume of traffic for a particular land use, and then because traffic goes through that area, so the land around that area will get developed, right? So more activities will take place there, and because this more activities have come up, it will be attracting more traffic, and this more traffic will not be able to be accommodated by the existing width of the road, so on. So we will build wider roads, and so that will again increase the activities going on there and increase the traffic and so on. So this is a cycle that goes on. So with this cycle, what happens is there is more activities going on and there is more noise generating activities that will take place. and therefore that is one of the factor that will influence the noise in an area, right? So you have more dense roads, the more activities taking place, there will be more noise in the area, right? So that is also true. So all the three statements are correct. So option A is the right option. Okay, question number 5 is increase in the vehicular emissions is directly proportional to dash. So the options are increased vehicle age, lack of regular maintenance of vehicle, both of these, and none of these. Okay, we have one vote for option C. Okay, any other answer? Okay, so we have one option as A and one as C. Right, so the right answer is actually option C. It is both of options A and B. Right, so both are uh, both lead to increased vehicular emission. So one is increased vehicle age. So with increased vehicle age, so what happens? Your vehicle becomes less efficient in converting the fuel, into the energy, and that's what is becoming vehicular emissions, right? So when you have unburnt fuel, so that's basically is going to, or not completely burnt. So that's getting emitted through the tailpipe. right? So then you have lack of regular maintenance. Again, that will also be reducing the vehicle efficiency to convert the fuel into energy, right? So one is increased vehicle age. So with age, your vehicle efficiency is going to keep going down, right? So even if you're properly maintaining it. The other thing is lack of regular maintenance. Even if your vehicle is not too old, but you are not maintaining it properly, then in that case as well, so there will be more emissions coming from your vehicle. So right, so it's a combination. So both of these factors are important. So both vehicle age as well as the lack of regular maintenance can contribute to the increased vehicular emissions. Right, so both are correct. So therefore, option C is the right one. So question number 6 is, again we have statements that we have to choose whether they are correct or not. So first one is, the physical damage during accidents can induce pain or distress and can lead to psychological disturbances. Statement 2, per kilometer emission rates increase with reductions in the traffic speeds due to the speed bumps. So we have only two statements and we have to say whether both the statements are true, or only the first statement is true, or only the second statement is true, or none of these statements are true. Okay, we have one vote for option B. Any other answer? All right, so we have one vote for B and one for D. So from both, it is common that 2 is false. All right, so let's take a look at the answer. So the right answer is in fact option A, that both the given statements are correct. Okay, neither of them is false. So let's look at them one by one. So the first one, I think uh, it's more easy to understand why it's true, because physical damage during accidents can induce pain or distress. So this one, I think everyone would agree. So that there is an accident, so there is physical damage, so that will definitely create pain and distress, right? So that's obvious. So that part is true, but uh, this is the physical its impact, the accident impact on the physical health, but there is also an effect on the mental health, right? So when people go through such experiences, so that can even create trauma, right? So and that trauma will affect their mental health. It will lead to psychological disturbances as well, right? So that is also possible. So it's not just the pain and the distress that we experience, but also it may not be immediately occurring, but it can happen that it can also create psychological disturbances even at a later point in time, right? So that so both the physical as well as the mental aspects can be affected by the accidents. So statement 1 is correct. Statement 2, I think this is the more trickier one that you may need time to think. So it talks about per kilometer emission rates and its relationship with the reduction in traffic speeds. So if you just look up to this particular part, then it's more tricky. So it just says per kilometer emission rates increase with reduction in traffic speed. I say tricky because the relationship is not linear. So why is that? So what happens is when you are talking about speed reduction, it is important to know from what level to what level is this reduction that we are talking about, right? So when you are reducing the speeds, from high to moderate levels, right? So when the reduction is from high to some moderate level, say maybe 40 kilometers or 35, something like that. So in that case, the per kilometer emission rate will also actually decrease, right? So you will be reducing the emissions. So that is more favorable. But here what we are talking about is the speed reduction due to speed bumps. So speed bumps, so what they do, they reduce the speeds to even lower levels, say maybe 5 kilometers or 10-kilometer levels per hour, right? So in that very small speed levels, that very low reductions, so what happens is the per kilometer emission rate will actually increase, right? So that's why it is so that's why this could be a tricky statement. But here we know what is the, we can get a sense of what is the speed reduction that we are talking about because of the speed bumps that is given here. So it is in the lower range. So at this lower range there will be more emission, there will be higher emission. So the emission rate per kilometer will be more. Why? Because there will be a lot of stop and go. That means you will be reducing the speed, then you will be again increasing the speed, then again you will be reducing the speed. So there is a lot of acceleration, deceleration that is taking place, right? And therefore that leads to more emissions actually. So this is detrimental than if you just cruise at a constant speed at a moderate level. So that will actually, that is more beneficial. So in this case it is detrimental, and therefore the correct statement 2 is also correct. So both statements are correct, therefore option A is the right one. Okay, any questions so far? Do you have any doubts or anything? Okay, so if there is no doubts, we'll move on. Question number 7 is again a statement that we have to choose whether they are correct or not. So first one is traffic air pollution affects humans through inhalation of polluted air. Statement 2, the length and breadth of the polluted area is proportional to the number of motorized vehicles in the streets. So we have to say whether only statement 1 is true or only 2 is true, both are true or both are false. I think this is easier than the previous one. Okay, we have two votes, both for option C. Right, so the right answer is also C. I think this was a very obvious one. So first statement says the traffic air pollution affects humans through inhalation of the polluted air. So this is correct. So that's how it has a direct impact on the health because we are exposed to the polluted air, right? So we are breathing air that is polluted with this pollutants from our traffic emissions, right? So because we are inhaling that, it's getting into our body, affecting us, right? So that is clear. So there is a direct impact of this because of breathing the polluted air. So statement 1 is correct. Statement 2 is the length and breadth of the polluted air is proportional to the number of motorized vehicles in the streets. So this is also correct. So we are talking about the spatial extent, length and breadth of the polluted air. So how far is the extent of the pollution that is being generated? So how large an area that we are affecting? So that is proportional to the number of motorized vehicles in the street, right? So which means that so when you have a large number of vehicles, so what does it mean? There is a large amount of pollution that is being generated, right? So more emissions we are having. So more emissions, what will happen? There will be higher emissions. So there will be more emissions, which means they will spread to a larger area, right? So because they are more dense in at the generation point, right? So because air moves, so it will also spread to a larger area. It won't get diluted, so quickly, right? So if you have lesser emissions, so they will spread and dilute in a quickly, and then the area that is getting affected is minimized. So when you have more vehicles, more emissions generated, so they will take a large area before they become diluted. So the range of area that they are affecting will also be larger, right? So therefore statement 2 is also correct. So both statements are true, therefore option C is the right one. Okay, question number 8 is dash and dash are emissions from fossil fuel based transport system. So the options are benzene and non-methane volatile organic compounds. Option B is hydrocarbons and carbon monoxide. C is both A and B, and D is none of the above. Right, so we are talking about the fossil fuel based systems and their emissions. So we have two votes for option B. So the right option is C. Both A and B are correct. So B is correct, but both A is also correct. Right. So we are talking about fossil fuel based system. So benzene and non-methane volatile organic compounds is also one of the major pollutant. So it's not just carbon dioxide, right? So that we usually know, but there are other emissions from from the use of from the burning of fossil fuels, right? So benzene and non other non-methane volatile organic compounds. So they are also generated from fossil fuel burning, right? So carbon monoxide is also there. Hydrocarbons will also be coming, and other oxides of sulfur, nitrogen. So they are also the byproducts of this fossil fuel, using fossil fuels, right? So if you look at them, so the benzene, non-methane volatile organic compounds, and carbon monoxide, this we can say as the major emissions, right? So they will be in large amounts. Relatively, hydrocarbons like methane, so they will also be there, but in trace amounts only. So these three are major, and hydrocarbon will be in trace amounts, but nevertheless, all the four are emissions that we get from burning fossil fuels, right? So all the four are part of the emission. So both options A and B are correct. Okay, question number 9 is we are given with two lists. So list 1 and list 2. So we have to choose, match the things given in list 1 with the corresponding thing in list 2. Okay, so we have a set of codes given to us. So A, soil quality matched with pH level, like that. Ships ships with pH level, A with 3, soil quality, ballast water, so on. So we have codes that give a predefined matching. We have to choose one of them which is correct. Basically, we have to see the association. So it may not be any particular aspect that we are looking at. So what's the most correct association that we can have from list 1 and list 2? We have one vote for option B. Any other answer? Okay, we have two votes for option D. Okay, so the right option is D. Right, so A is matched with 4. Right, so this is A. B is matched with 3. C with 1 and D with 2. Right, so we have A as soil quality. So soil quality is associated with pH level. Why? Because so for example, we use some salts are used for de-icing of roads, right? So in the west, during winters, so there'll be ice formation or snow formation on the roads, right? So this blocks the traffic. So to quickly remove them, they'll use salts to de-ice them. So what is the downside of it is that these salts, they can ultimately get into the soil, right? So they'll be having a higher, they'll be increasing the pH level of the water, and ultimately they'll get into the soil and increase the pH level, so it will become more acidic, right? So that affects your soil quality. So that's one of the closest relations that we can see from the given list. So A is matched with 4. So ships is more related to ballast water, right? So ballast water is water is filled into ships, to improve their stability, right? So when ships are traveling empty, especially these cargo ships, so to make them more stable, so they increase the weight of the ship by filling it with this water. So that's called the ballast water. So once they are when they are traveling with heavy cargo, at that time it's not filled with this water, and once they drop off the cargo, the ship's weight will go down. So to compensate for that, they will be adding this ballast water. So that's more related to ships. And C is groundwater flow. So groundwater flow is actually affected by the road drainage, right? So when you have improper drainage facilities even for the road, the water that gets into the ground is affected. And also sometimes the flow of the groundwater is also affected when you are building the roads, right? So we are excavating several layers of the road soil, and then we'll be building this road. So the natural flow that was present below that can also get affected by it. So the road drainage is more related to the groundwater flow. And T is oil spills. So oil spill affects the aquatic life, right? So and also the coastal any species living on the coast. So here we also looked at one case study in which the oil spills created issues for one of the endangered species of penguins, right? So that is more related to oil spill. So the right mapping is given in option D. So that's the right option. So one of the trick that you can use for these matching kind of questions is you need not look at all the different combinations. You once for sure some of the options is related with some thing in the other list, so you can use that to reduce your options. For example, A is matched with so for example ship's ballast water, that is one of the obvious ones. So you have B with 3. So how many options here I have B with 3 matching? So it's only in B and D. So you are already eliminated 2 options, so only look for the combinations given here and then choose which of that is correct. So if you know, for example, comparing tn1 and tn2, that's what is differentiating b and c. So if you can then after you have chosen b with 3, so if you can filter out d between 1 and 2, then you have your answer ready. Right? So that's one thing that you can use to quickly answer this matching kind of questions. Okay, so question number 10 is, which of the following is not a direct impact of the transportation systems on the environment? So the options are habitat fragmentation, loss of wildlife habitat, corridor restrictions, and forest fires. Okay. Any other answer? We have one vote for B so far. Okay, two votes for D. It's forest fires. The right option is option D. It is forest fires, right? So here we are talking about which of the following is not a direct impact, right? So what is so I already mentioned about the direct and indirect impact. So what is a direct impact? So it is says you are doing some activity A, and because you are doing activity A, it is leading to some issue B. Okay. So if it is a direct impact, so to call this activity A is directly impacting B, so what does it mean is if you removed activity A, if you didn't do activity A, then B will also not be there. Issue B will also not arise. So if that is the case, then we say that the this B is the direct impact of A, right? So but in the other case, if A is there, doing A is causing B, right? But if you remove A, it doesn't guarantee that B will not occur. So some other reason could also influence and create the issue B. So if that is the case, it means that B is not a direct impact of A, right? So it may be an indirect impact, or it may be not an impact of A at all, right? So that's the difference between the direct impact and indirect or other other factors causing it. So in this case, we are asked about which of the following is not a direct impact. Right? So we already looked at habitat fragmentation, right? So separation of a population of a particular species. So that is habitat fragmentation caused by the transportation system. When you're constructing a new system through a forest area that was a natural habitat earlier, so you're dividing it into different fragments. Loss of wildlife habitat, again you're destroying natural land. Maybe you're removing trees, removing the land that was earlier used as shelter by by other species. So you're losing the wildlife habitat. So this is also a direct impact of the transportation system, right? So if you didn't construct it there, so this would not have happened. Third is corridor restrictions. So corridor restrictions also is basically you are restricting the movement of the animals from one side to the other side. Again, this is caused because of the the roads and the railways that are passing through the forests or the lands where these animals naturally live, right? So restricting their movements from one side to the other, right? So their basically their movement is now restricted. So this is also a direct impact, because if you didn't have the transportation system in that particular area, then this particular corridor restriction would not have occurred. So all A, B and C are direct impacts of the transportation system, whereas D is not a direct impact. Why? Because transportation system is not just the only cause of forest fire, right? So we are not really making anything that's leading to the forest fire. So forest fires may occur due to other reasons as well. So we are not the activities of the transportation system is not really directly contributing to the forest fires. So therefore it is not a direct impact. Therefore, the right option is D, forest fires. Okay, question number 11 is which of the following is the most used fuel in the transport sector worldwide in the year 2020? Options are hydrogen, gasoline, biofuel, and kerosene. We have two votes for B, gasoline. So the right option is also option B, it is gasoline. Right, so gasoline is nothing but petrol, right? So we say petrol, but in the West, especially if you go to US, so they will call it, basically they will call it gas, because gas, we should not confuse it with the fluid. The gas, actual gas. It's the short form for gasoline, right? So petrol is called gasoline. So that is the most used fuel in the transport sector worldwide, at least in 2020. Right, so the second most is nothing but diesel, right? So petrol and diesel are the most used fuel, right? So this, then we'll have kerosene and biofuel, so they will come only after gasoline and diesel. So hydrogen is not very popular, right? So it is more cleaner, but it is still not popular because there are technological issues. So we have gasoline as the predominant fuel that we are still using today, right? That is a major factor, major fuel that we are using in the transportation sector. So the right option is B. So question 12 is walking and cycling as daily activities directly do not dash. So benefit health, decrease noise pollution, decrease air pollution, increase the biodiversity. Okay, we have two votes, one for A and one for D. Okay, so the right option is D, increase biodiversity. So probably option A was chosen in a hurry because the question was not read properly. So the question says walking and cycling as daily activities directly do not, right? So it is what it is not directly contributing to, right? So we have to be careful in reading the question, right? So we do it in a hurry, we may make a mistake, right? So in this case, so walking and cycling, they actually help, improve the health, right? So there is a health benefit because of walking and cycling, right? So doing physical activities help, right? So they are like exercising, so they improve our health conditions, right? So therefore they do, affect our health, right? So therefore option A is not the right one. Option B, decrease noise pollution. Yes, because when you are walking and cycling, you are reducing the number of motorized vehicles, right? So non-motorized forms. So these are not adding to the noise pollution. So therefore, noise pollution decreases. Option C, decrease air pollution. Again, non-motorized modes of travel, right? So there is no fuel that is or fossil fuel that is being used, right? So there is no air pollution generated, right? So it leads to decrease in the air pollution. So all these three are directly arising out of choosing walking and cycling as our modes of transport. Option D, increase biodiversity. So there is no direct relation between walking and cycling to increasing biodiversity. Probably there is an indirect effect because you are not going to build these railway tracks through a forest because people do not need it. They are going to walk and cycle. So that you can say there is it may eventually lead to an increased biodiversity, but here we are talking about a direct relationship, right? So there is no direct relation that walking and cycling is going to increase the biodiversity, right? So therefore that is the right option. So it does not directly increase biodiversity. So the right option is D. Okay, question number 13 is noise pollution can be considered as an indirect impact of transportation on the environment. So the options are true, false. So we have to say whether the given statement is correct or not. Okay, again we have mixed result. One vote for A and one vote for B. Right, so the right option is option B. It is a false statement. Okay, why it is a false statement? Again, going back to what I told about the direct and the indirect impact. So what did I tell? So direct impact is then you have a certain activity or a certain phenomenon A, and then you have the impact or the consequence B, right? So if you remove A didn't happen. If that if in that case if B also does not happen, so then we can say that B is a direct impact of A, right? So if that doesn't happen, so if you remove A, that does not lead to removing B. So in that case, it is an indirect impact. Okay, so here we are talking about noise pollution. So we know it is an impact of the transportation system, but is it a direct or an indirect impact? So very simple. So you go to a busy road, right? So there is a lot of traffic, and you have certain level of noise, right? So it could be if it's a very busy road, there will be a very high level of noise, right? So you go to the same road at midnight, so you won't have as many vehicles or almost zero vehicles, right? So in that case, you'll clearly see a reduced noise level, right? So there will be almost, it will be very calm, right? So therefore, you can see that it is because of the presence of these vehicles, right? So therefore, it's because of this transportation system that we had that higher level of noise, right? So therefore, it is a direct impact. So you don't have those many vehicles on the road, so you don't have that high level of noise. So it is a direct impact. So therefore, the given statement is incorrect because it says that noise pollution is an indirect impact, but we know it is a direct impact. So therefore, this given statement is incorrect. So the right option is B. It is false. Okay, question number 14 is application of ballast water is related to the following mode of transportation. So the options are air, railway, road, and water. So to which mode of transportation is the ballast water related? Okay, we have two votes for D. I think this was an easy one. We already looked at ballast water, right, in the matching question. It's also water and water is a giveaway. So we saw ballast water is used in ships, for stability, right? So when they are, traveling empty or, with lesser weight, so we generally use or fill them with ballast water to, provide better stability and maneuverability, right? So the right option is it is associated with the water transportation. Okay, so the right option is D. Okay, question 15 is Bungru is applied as a mitigation measure for dash. So the options are protecting biodiversity, reducing the road accidents, soil stabilization, and groundwater recharge. So we looked at different mitigation measures in different lectures. So one of them was this Bungru. So for what type of issue did we discuss this as a mitigation measure? Okay, so we have one option as C and one as D. So the right option is D. It is for groundwater recharge. Right. So what this Bangru is basically, it's a technique used or from Gujarat, right? So we have basically this is your surface area, land surface, right? So below this you have several layers, and then finally you will have some groundwater flowing, right? So what this does is generally when you have, for example, rainfall or other forms of surface runoff, so what will happen is most of them would go away as runoff, right? So they will not really percolate into your soil, right? So some amount may go down, but most of it may run off and then go into the drainage, right? But what this bungalow does is that basically what you will do is collect your surface water, right, at the surface level itself, right? So you will collect it, and then there will be a long tube that will be going into the depths of the soil, right? So it will reach your groundwater levels, and what you do is basically all this collected surface water will be used to recharge this your groundwater source, right? So that particular technique is called as or termed as Bangru, right? So that's for option D, groundwater recharge, right? So it's not used for the other things. So that's the purpose. The right option is D. Question 16 is the noise level at the commercial areas in night time should not exceed dash decibels. This is A weighted decibel as per the Central Pollution Control Board standards. So the options are 40, 45, 50, and 55. Okay, any other answer? We have one vote for D. Okay, two votes for D. So the right option is also D. It is 55. Right. So this is from the standard. So we only look at the CPCB standards for the noise pollution levels. It's basically given, for different land use types, and also we have the noise levels given for daytime and nighttime separately. Right. So basically, if you look at it, there will be sensitive areas like schools, colleges, hospitals. So those are the sensitive areas. Then you have residential areas, commercial areas, and industrial areas. Right. So if you just look at the land use type, so the most lenient would be for industrial area, which means that there is higher noise levels are acceptable for industrial areas. Right. So it will be industrial area will be having a higher acceptable noise level than your commercial area. So which will be again higher than for residential areas, which is greater than for your other sensitive areas. Right. So that's the hierarchy when you just look at the land use. And between the day and night time, you will find that daytime will have a little higher permissible noise level than your night time, right? So if you look at that, so we are looking at this particular combination for commercial areas at night time. So right, so that's what we are looking at, and that is from the standard it is 55 decibels. Okay, so that's straight out of the CPCB standards. Question number 17 is match the following transportation impacts with the correct geographical scale. Right, so we have three different impacts and three different scales. So noise and emissions, climate change, smog and acid rain. Three scales are global, regional and local. So we have to say which impact is at which scale, right? So we have four different combinations given. We have one vote for C. Any other answer? Okay, we have two votes for option C. The right option is also option C, where 1 is matched with C. So this is 1, and 2 is matched with A, and 3 is matched with B. Right. So what's this scale of an impact? So basically, what the scale is basically, how what is the spatial and the temporal extent, right? So that's what is going to define the scale of your impact, right? So what do we mean by local is it is only within a few maybe a few kilometers of that particular point where this impact is originating, right? And also it is only short lived, which means that it's not going to last for a long time. So that's the local scale. Then regional scale is maybe at a city level or a state level, or even it can could be at a country level as well. So that's the regional scale. Somewhat intermediate. It's to a somewhat larger extent in space, and also the effects can last for some time. Right, but when we go for the global scale, it means that it's something that's impacting at a worldwide, right? And also it is happening for a large duration of time. The impact can be felt for a long period of time. So that's the global scale. So then if you look at the impacts, so we have climate change. So that's the most easiest one. So there is the impact of climate change is worldwide, right? So it can be felt everywhere. It can be seen everywhere, right? So therefore, it is obvious that this climate change is a global impact, right? So that's why 2 is matched with A. So next we have noise emissions. So this is the next easiest one. This is the local one. Why? Because the effect or can be felt only in the localized region only, right? So noise only to a certain range of distance, you will be impacted by this noise that is generated at a particular place, right? So and also the emissions that are generated at a location will get dissipated, right? So its impact will be more at the point of its generation, right? So that's where it's more concentrated. So as you go away from that point, it's going to get more and more diluted, and then its effect is will be its effectiveness will be less in terms of the impact it's going to cause. Right? So these two are local scale impacts. And the third is the smog and acid rain. So this is it's again not at the global level, right? So this is because of the particulates that we are emitting from the transportation sector, right? So that's creating the smog and acid rain, but this is not at a global scale. Again, it is also not at a local scale, right? Because this can have its impact at a much relatively larger area, than if you compare it to a noise pollution or emissions, right? So this can maybe for example at a city level there could be an impact of the smog, right? So therefore this is more at a regional scale, right? So therefore 3 is matched with B, right? So the right combination is given in option C, 1 with C, 2 with A, and 3 with B, right? So the scale is basically dependent on how big an area is getting affected, and also the duration of the impact. Okay, moving on to question number 18 is which of the following user group is most affected by traffic generated air pollution? Okay, so the options are cyclists, pedestrians, public transport users, car users. So we have two votes for option B, pedestrians. The right option is, in fact, option D, car users. Right. So this may be surprising. Right. So we think that pedestrians and cyclists are more exposed, and therefore they are the most affected group, but it is in fact, car users who are the most affected groups, because when you're talking about traffic generated air pollution, so it's not just the from the tailpipes, but also there is this particulate matters and other fumes generated that can also get into the cars, the inside of the cars, right? So, and also when you have windows closed and the air getting circulated inside, so there is the car users, the passengers inside the car are also exposed to these pollutants. So also you spend the most time that you spend in heavy traffic, so the more you are exposed to these pollutants, right? So therefore there is more vulnerability to these air pollution for the car users, right? So because they are the most exposed in this in to this air pollution than the other groups that are listed here. So the right option is option D, car users. Okay, question number 19 is, the destruction of natural habitats and creation of artificial habitats are potential problems during the dash stage in the life cycle of a road railway. Okay, the options are removal, operation, construction, and planning. So these are the different stages in the life cycle of a road or a railway. So in which stage can we see these problems? We have we have two votes for option C. The right option is option C. It's during the construction stage, right? So if you just order them during the life cycle, so we'll start with the planning stage, right? So then we go to the construction stage, right? So then there'll be the operation of the facility, and finally removal. Okay, so that's the whole life cycle. Right. So if you just look at the planning stage, during the planning stage, there's nothing implemented on the field, right? So there's no question of habitat creation or destruction in that stage, right? So everything is on paper during the planning stage. Also, if you look at the operation and removal, so it is it's basically dealing with what is already out there, right? So you have a road or a railway laid out, right? So the operation takes place on that road or a railway, Removal, again removing what's already has been laid out, right? So in this case, we are again not going to destroy anything new, any habitats, right, or create anything new, right? So that also is not on. So it's only in the construction phase, right? So that's where we are. So we may potentially destroy any natural habitat and create any other artificial habitats, right? So that's possible only during the construction stage, right? So this is where we are going to create something new, right? So by destroying something that's already there, or at some other locations as well. So this is the stage of the road or a railway life cycle. That's where these two can potentially happen, right? So therefore the right option is C, it is the construction stage. Okay, any questions? Okay, with this, we come to the end of this particular session. So if you have any questions or doubts, you may ask now. Okay, so if you have no questions, so we can close the session here, and we'll meet again, next Sunday at 4 o'clock. Okay, thank you for attending. So you may feel free to log out.